Hey everyone, in my latest podcast, I once again catch up with MariMed, who shares details of their recent trip in Chicago at the Benzinga Conference, and it was a positive one. Many bankers wanting to lend money to this company. Why? Because business fundamentally, they are knocking it out of the park. We also talk about expansion, and could we see some needle-moving acquisitions by this company in the short term? Their CFO explains it all in my latest podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to the Dales Report series. I am happy to be joined today with someone from MariMed that you're going to really enjoy this conversation. But before we get into that, I just want to remind you, without you, we would not be here. So if you can, leave a comment below on where you think this whole cannabis landscape is going to move as we head into the midterm elections. As well, if you like this, share this with your network. Click on that bell for all notifications. And if you love what we got produced, make sure to subscribe to our channel, because without you, we would not be here. And as mentioned, let's talk U.S. cannabis. And I'm happy to be joined today with the CFO of MariMed, Susan Villare. Susan, great to catch up. And it was great seeing you a couple of weeks ago at the Benzinga Conference. But how are things?
Oh, very good. It's been busy. We're 2 days into quarter close. So it's great, though, to take a break from doing that for sure and speak with you today.
Just another day in cannabis, right?
Oh, for sure. Yes, it was a busy month end, so it was great. Trucks were full, and we actually borrowed trucks to get it out. Yeah.
Well, as I said off the top, I saw you at the Benzinga Conference in Chicago a couple of weeks ago. A lot of the big players in the cannabis landscape were there to speak. Big topic, obviously, was mergers, acquisitions. But for you and the team overall, a couple of the people were keynote speakers at that event. You're looked at as a very viable company, to say the least, within the industry. But how was the overall experience for you and your team the couple of days that you were in Chicago?
No, it was great. We met with a lot of investors, and we recently went public on the Canadian exchange. So we were initially on the OTC, and when I joined in May, that was one of the first action items. So a couple weeks later, we were public. So it was great to see those investors. And then we had endless meetings with folks who wanted to lend us money, sell us their, dispensary or their grow facility. So it was a lot of traffic, and a lot of folks knew both, John and Steve West was there, and Rennie Gulliver. So they were constantly coming into our booth area. So it was great.
That's positive, to say the least. I think your shareholders obviously would love to hear that. I want to begin. We'll get into more like the business aspect of it all, but let's talk about your recent appointment to the MariMed executive team as the chief financial officer. You joined the team earlier this year, back in May, after working in the finance side of the telecom industry for the past decade. So big changes, to say the least. So let's start with that. Maybe start by telling us a little bit about your background. And interesting, I love, as this industry is new, even though the plant's been around for a long time, but what prompted you to move to the cannabis industry? Because it's a fascinating industry, is it not, to say the least?
Oh, it sure is. I don't know that I would have come a few years ago. So I did have some colleagues who left high tech, and they started maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and they went to the Canadian exchange, and they cautioned not for the faint of heart. And so, this past, 3 years with COVID hitting, et cetera, I was, reaching my 10 years in telecom and 30 years in high tech. And I said, I love accounting. I love what I do, but I'd like to do something that's far more interesting. So I certainly did a right turn, and I got a call from a recruiter, and I met the management team, and it was just great that they'd been at it for 10, 12 years, and the growth was tremendous, which is what drew me in. I mean, going from 50 million to 100 million to our guidance this year is 135 to 140. And the margins are fantastic at over 50%, and EBITDA margins at 35%. I was like, wow, this is something really exciting. And, I liked also that they were doing a ton of M&A work. So in my career, I've probably done over, I want to say 100 acquisitions, many much bigger than they've done here. But, I'm not new to fundraising, as well as, I've been on every exchange. So I thought I'd try this. So I've been on the New York, the NASDAQ, I've been on the AIM, but I have never been on the OTC or the Canadian. So I've checked all those boxes. So we'll see what other exchanges we can go to next. Yeah.
Has the experience so far been everything that you imagined and more? Because when you talk about some of those top line growths, which is big numbers to say the least, and what I'm finding obviously within this industry, whatever companies are on the right side are way on the right side, and those that are not are way on the wrong side. You're on the right side right now. And like you said, there's some big growth opportunities that you've just outlined, but has it been everything that you imagined and more so far?
Yeah, no, it actually far exceeds my expectations. So, when I was in the interview process, they were talking about all this M&A work. And, my first,
Yeah.
I want to say 4 days, we closed a huge kind acquisition in Maryland. So it was about, a $20 million wholesale business that the company had managed and, had put in all the SOPs, et cetera. And then they said, oh, that's not enough. Let's do, a grow acquisition in Illinois where there's 4 dispensaries. And they said, let's get vertical. And then 5 minutes later, we won the Ohio dispensary, which is medical. And then the Beverly acquisition got approved. So we are going to have a dispensary that's rec in Massachusetts. And then 5 minutes later, we were doing Casey, Illinois. So that was, I said, is it
Wow.
always this busy? And they said, well, Susan, we've been working on these for a while. And they kind of all came to a head when you joined. I said, I don't know if I'm good luck or what's going on here, but it has been very exciting for sure.
I'm going to go off script here. I'd like to find out just basically what you said, and that is you're winning a lot of licenses in various states, and it seems like that's just language that people find out and you hear about on a day-to-day basis with specific companies. But why do you think that you win or are winning these licenses with new markets that you're going in?
Well, the actual wins, Ohio, they did have an effort that they said that's an exciting state. So when they went in, they did the application. I think they applied for 4 and they got 1. We would have liked to have gotten a few more. So we are looking at some M&A to buy some licenses that folks can't really, operationalize. Connecticut, they did win the application. It's 1 state over. So they had some folks that were focused on that, and they did that with a social equity partner. And they only, I think at that point, gave 18 of them grow licenses, and MariMed, because of, they know how to write applications, they won. And then the gem in there was that we also get 2 dispensaries, which is great news and upside that they weren't even, expecting to win. So I think it's just, that's how they cut their teeth. For 12 years, they've been, helping folks who wanted to get
Yeah.
into cannabis. They started in California and they've helped tons of different companies. They did Delaware, which we manage now. And that will come under the fold of MariMed. So they kind of have the secret sauce of how you fill out those applications, how you get to the
Great.
right folks to get those approved. Yeah.
Yeah. When we look at this industry, it's obviously seen its share of headwinds over the past few quarters, from price compression in most states to a general slowdown in consumer spending, somewhat mild. I wouldn't read too much into that. But from what you've learned so far, when you look at this executive team, the way the company has grown, you've outlined some numbers on the big growth. How would you best describe on how the company has been able to work through a lot of these challenges from your experience so far?
Well, I think what's different is it was, Bob and John started the company, and many times some of the folks that I've met in the cannabis industry, the 4 months that I've been in it, is they stay with that. This management team realized that
Yeah.
they needed to
Okay.
get additional talent that they didn't have. So, like Steve West had already done IR at another cannabis company. We have our head of communications, Howard, who also worked with Steve. We have the head of marketing who, launched, stuff for Truly and Sam Adams. We have, the 2 founders who
Right.
do sales and, who do all of our grow production. Those were through acquisitions. That's how we got Betty's Eddies, and they stayed on. And then they realized that the company was growing, that they needed to bring in some talent to do, systems and SOX 404 and fundraising. And so they brought me in. So as the company grows, we are working on a strategic plan so we can stay focused, because it's very easy to run around with all of the distractions you can get in the industry. And so the management team kind of knows as it grows, we have to put systems in place and bring in talent to grow. Some of the folks we've, promoted from within, but they have a nice blend of, folks who have done it for 10 to 12 years, as well as new additions, the past
Yeah.
3 or 4 years, that really has rounded out the management team. I don't think there's that many in the cannabis industry that have the bench strength of our full management team suite that we have. And we're not too top heavy, which is good as well.
Yeah, and I can't that can't be underestimated. Some of the conversations I've had with Bob, even the past two, office morale and a lot
Hmm.
of the messaging from the top to bottom is extremely important. And that should be common sense, obviously, when you're getting involved with any business in any industry. But it seems it has been somewhat of a challenge for many companies within this space,
Hmm.
dating back to even when the Canadian cannabis landscape launched. But I find that the feedback that I receive more than anything about MariMed is just it's they care about a lot of their staff, and the morale that basically Bob has mentioned is extremely important. Would you not agree?
Well, yeah, they run it still like a family, so it is a little entertaining. But John was running around, our president, going, "Oh, we got to order the turkeys." I'm like, What are you talking about?" He goes, "Every employee gets a turkey." And I said, "We get a turkey?" And he's like, "Absolutely." And then, they do different things that people really like it. And I love going
Yeah.
on tours. So, I've hired probably 4 or 5 accountants because we have so much revenue, we don't know how to count it all. So we've gone on the
Yeah.
tours, and when I go on the tours of the facility, I love that every room I go into, whether they're doing pre-rolls or they're growing, they're so excited to talk to you about what they're doing, and they have just a real pride, and they have a huge smile on their face. And then, I think the company is really good to its employees. So if there's hardships or something like that, the whole MariMed team is there for folks, and, everyone cares. And a lot of the people have been with the company, since its beginnings days, like in Massachusetts, where I've seen most of the employees, most of them have been with the company since the beginning. And they're excited, and they have different
Mm.
opportunities as the companies grow. And if they're in the grow room, they want to go to the new live flower room where we're fresh curing, the flower, or they want to move over into the bakery where we're making the new, bubbies. So there's career path as people grow with the company, and others have started, in sales ops. Now they're running the full retail operations. So there is a lot of upward mobility as we go into different states and grow. And people like that, and they're treated well, and they're cared for. And everyone knows pretty much everyone's name as you walk the floors, et cetera. It's very nice. It's still 500 people,
Slow
so
and
I'm not
steady wins
sure.
the.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I'm not saying you're going slow, but slow and steady definitely wins the race. And I think as
Mhm.
people kind of reset their expectations with this industry, and this is why people are so polarized by it, because there's so much, I think we're scratching at the surface as to how much growth that we could possibly see. So, saying that, do you see a lot of light at the end of the tunnel regarding the multi-quarter headwinds that the industry, I guess, has been experiencing recently?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Maryland, we've seen the most pricing pressure. So I think it's somewhat stabilized. The reports came out that it's a couple points down, this past month. Mass, we've seen it somewhat stabilize, and where we've seen, there was some pressure, we have, developed an in-house brand that's kind of a mid-tier flower. And then we've been creative with our products. So people really do like the brands that we've brought out, and they're not, expensive. They're very competitive, but they're different. So whether it's the new ice cream we just launched, or it's, in Maryland, we've never done gummies before, but we're doing gummies, and they're sold out every every single week that they make them. And so, the company's very, very creative. And then we partner with, brands that people, like. So we have Tropizon, that's, a hot sauce, which I don't do hot sauce, but apparently it's very well liked. Or if in the fall, if you want some hot cocoa, I guess I can try the Calm hot cocoa. But the people really
Yeah.
like it's hand, made, and it's made with care, and the quality is, consistent time and time again, which is very important.
Edibles has seen such a huge growth.
It is interesting on the edibles. I was kind of like taffy. I wasn't a big taffy. I went to the Jersey Shore when I was a kid, and I tried the Betty's Eddies. And I'm not just saying it because I work for MariMed. It is delicious. And so they're coming out with some new flavors that'll be launched shortly. And I
Great.
was like, oh, the grape is delicious. But there's all new, a big, campaign coming shortly of the new Betty's FX, and the flavors apparently are even better than the existing ones. And so it's exciting.
Yeah.
And they use like the old taffy machines from England. And so we have actually automated with some new upgraded ones, but they're the ones that you would see at, the stores, when you were on the Jersey boardwalk. They were the same machines that, do the taffy pulls. It's very interesting. So all
Yeah.
handmade
The
and
industry as it's
homemade.
evolved.
Yeah.
Yeah, the industry as how it's involved is cost per scale, branding. Yes, those are important topics, but at the same time, it comes down to is your product good or not? And I think as we start to advance in this industry, we're starting to see a lot of companies up their game a little bit, which is nice to see for obviously long term sustainability for the actual industry. Want to focus on business strategy and the approach that your company continues to make, focusing on limited license states cushioned, or should say, has focusing on limited license states cushioned your financial performance somewhat, do you think?
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. I mean, so the focus has always been, seed to sale with limited, licenses in each state. And then we're very selective on the location. So, for example, in Massachusetts, we can have up to 3 medical and 3 rec. And, the company for the longest time has only had one dispensary. So it took a very long selective process. And, we're opening up a dispensary in Beverly where, they can be up to 3 in that town. Only one other is potentially opening at this point. And so, the traffic that we're going to get is right off, a major thoroughfare. And so they're very selective. And even in Illinois, where there's, it's limited licenses, they chose when everyone was going to Chicago to do Southern Illinois. And so they were getting all the bordering states that did not have approved cannabis, which served it well. So Metropolis is our largest dispensary that we have in Illinois. And, we have not seen any pricing compression there, and the traffic and the numbers continue to astound. We had a record high, I think, again in September, one of the days. So they've been very smart of where in those limited states as well that we, set up shop.
When I look at the way you're expanding, some of the recent interviews I've done with other executive members of the company, more notably President John Levine, he characterized MariMed as the hunter versus the hunted in regards to potential acquisition interest down the line, which capital-wise your team clearly has set up to potentially do. So do you see the company putting together a needle-moving deal with existing cash flow?
Yeah, I mean, last year we had, positive cash flow from operations over $30 million. So the company generates a tremendous amount of cash, which is great. We don't have huge debt on the balance sheet. We have mortgages. Our real estate is about 60%, levered on the debt. So we have plenty of room. We're about 1x leverage. So to the extent we wanted to do a transformational acquisition, we certainly can do that. What we've done on the tuck-ins is pretty creative. We will do a tasteful blend of a little bit of equity, usually a seller note, and it's kind of tied to revenue paid over time. And then, if there a small bit of cash. And so that has served us well. But to the extent that there's a transformational acquisition we wanted to do, we certainly do have folks that, are ready and willing to make that happen.
Good to know. Big topic at the Benzinga Conference in Chicago a couple weeks ago was debt, to say the least. What are your thoughts on the overall debt market landscape for the cannabis industry right now?
Well, it's tricky for me to say. My last company, I raised about 500 million, and the debt was at about, I did put a collar on it, so it was about 2.5% interest. So again, new to cannabis, so I was told that, whoa, debt rates are above 10%. So it's taken me a while. So they are a higher rate for sure. But, I think we have a really, really solid financial footprint with, again, no debt, positive cash flow, really strong management team. So to the extent that, we needed to raise a little bit of debt to do some of these acquisitions, I'm not adverse to that. Do I want to have, a leverage ratio of 4x? Probably not. 1x is pretty lean where we are today.
Yep.
So we have plenty of runway to, decide what we want to do.
So important when you look at companies under the hood. That's probably one of the most overlooked, I think, information that a lot of investors miss on. But debt, obviously, for what we're seeing, the loans that are being produced, it's a big concern right now within the industry. But like I said earlier, for those that are cashed up in a position that are on the right side, they're in a very viable position. Agreed?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. Yeah, so we're very, very selective. And Rennie, who does a lot of our M&A, we go through a 14-prong, metrics review, and we're only going to do profitable, accretive growth that's cash flow positive. So we have no desire to do unprofitable growth at all.
Okay, now for the million-dollar question that every executive loves. It's all about safe banking. Recent times, there have been several major cannabis executives and investment bank analysts who have expressed optimism, and that's an understatement, that federal cannabis reform, specifically safe banking, will be potentially added on, could pass in the lame duck session in Congress, especially even rumors this week pertaining to Safe Plus passing in the lame duck session. So how do you feel about the chances of reform passing in Congress? Do you pay much attention to it?
Well, for sure. I get the notices daily. So everyone has a different opinion. I don't want to speculate, but I'll give you my personal opinion. I don't personally think it's going to pass anything significant this fall. I know people are hopeful. It would be great that we could maybe get a lower cost of capital, but we have plenty of banks and we're not impacted by it. But to the extent that it would help our operations, obviously we would be very delighted. I think that's still probably, maybe my opinion, maybe a year or two off. But we'll see. I could be
So you
wrong.
don't believe safe banking? Yeah, you don't think safe banking will pass this fall.
Mm-mm.
What do you think? How do you think the industry develops if that doesn't pass, let's say over the next 6 months?
Well, I mean, I think they'll have to do, creative banking and figure out how they run their operations without it. I mean, so the cannabis industry is going strong. It is definitely a barrier for many, but those that are existing MSOs, they've figured out how to exist without it. So I think we'll just continue what we're doing.
Yeah. Great information today. I'll leave it with this one last question. What do you think makes a good CFO in the cannabis landscape?
I guess a good sense of humor. I don't know. I think the ability, yeah, I think the ability not, to be nimble. So when you think you know what you know, you have to really stay on top of it. So if you think like, oh gosh, this is exactly what we're doing, you really have to be all over the markets, knowing what the pricing's going on, what's going on with, if you think you're in a limited license state, something changes. So the good news is for MariMed, we have a bunch of folks monitoring that all the time. So I think just staying on top of what each individual state we're in and running the operations accordingly.
This has been great. Appreciate the update. Trade on the CSC under the ticker symbol MRMD, and on the OTC ticker symbol, don't have that at the top of my head, but do you know it? Is it MRMD as well?
Same. Yes, easy to remember.
It is. It is. There's some people that are not seen in this interview, but are giving me the noise in the background saying, yes, that is indeed the ticker symbol. So listen, appreciate the time. Keep up the great work. I know there was a lot of talk at Benzinga with specific companies, and you were at the forefront with a lot of your executive team speaking, but congrats on the achievements. And most importantly, let's keep in touch.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. So what'd you think of the interview? If there's any information that you want to know more of or want to learn about, then provide us with feedback by leaving a comment below. And if you like what we're producing, then feel free to subscribe to our channel, share this video with your network, and as well, click on that bell for all notifications, because we would not be here without you. We appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everyone.